videotaping yourself. And you'll sometimes see people uploading their videos to YouTube and just walking back and forth towards and away from the camera, just seeing how the garment moves, especially if you have a train on your dress, do it, because especially when you turn around, you'll know how it works and you're not going to step backwards and fall on yourself.
Knowing how your costume moves ahead of your whatever your convention or your performance is kind of a big deal. When you're doing theater, you have a week of dress rehearsal usually, so you know. But when you come to a convention, oftentimes you don't have that opportunity.
And speaking of which, put on the shoes or footwear that you're gonna, before you hem, that you plan on wearing.
And put them on before you put a corset on.
Before you fit.
Yes.
You should, just like Dodie was saying about underpinnings, your shoes are part of that. They change your posture, they change everything. So be aware of that when you're fitting, that if you're gonna wear a high-heeled shoe or something different than you normally wear, you should include your shoes when you're fitting.
And always have safety pins. I have a couple of dresses that by halfway through the event, I've got to get out of the heels, and it was made for heels. So I keep safety pins with me, and I go underneath that skirt, and I pin it up in little strategic places so I don't step on it, because I did step on it and rip my own skirt off on a stage. A little embarrassing. I was like, oh, sorry, let me fix that.
Don't forget your hair and makeup. It's wonderful to put on a gorgeous, gorgeous costume, and then you have your normal hair and makeup, and it feels unfinished. And one of the things specifically about that I tell people is, if you're wearing a really outrageous costume, like I am wearing acid green, you can't really get away with your normal day-to-day makeup or your normal hair. I am a little bit today because I'm hot. But kind of bump it up. You have to match your costume to a certain extent. You have to match the impact of your costume. And it's really not done until you go that final step.
If you want an example of how vast a difference this can make, if you go and look at some of my pictures of my early wearings of Lady Loki versus how it is now, I hadn't gotten the makeup down the very first time I wore it, and the pictures that came back, it looks like I'm not wearing any makeup at all. But you see the pictures now, and it's like straight 180 degrees, because sometimes you really have to push it to the extreme and treat it as stage makeup. And the way I do this is I take the crappiest picture that I can get off a webcam or my cell phone in the worst lighting possible. If it can show up on that, it should be able to show up on pretty much anyone's camera on the con floor.
Next question.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to add when you were talking about makeup, if you're doing any sort of elaborate makeup, test it first, please, on the inside of your arm to make sure you don't react to that makeup.
Yes. And I also highly recommend a good foundation, like eyeshadow primers, like especially if you have issues with oily skin and you get eye creases. Try to find a good primer. It sets your eyeshadow and it will just sit there all day long. Also set your lipstick. I use Ben Nye's neutral set powder. Just keep pressing it on your lips with a brush until you don't feel the stickiness anymore. Just smack your lips together. And I can touch my lips and nothing will transfer.
I think everyone kind of, over time, develops their own kind of makeup kit, and this is true with actors too. But don't be afraid to experiment. And I know sometimes it's really expensive, because like I wear MAC, and it's kind of an investment to buy a piece of MAC makeup. But I learned over time that it's worth it for me. But there are a lot of other companies out there that are just as good, and you just kind of have to try them. I hear really, really great things about, I think it's Atomic Cosmetics. Yes, yeah. I hear really, really great things about them, and someday I'm going to go try. So, hopefully that might be a really cool local resource for us.
It's a very small, more like a story sharing thing. I wore a costume for a performance, and at the beginning of the performance I was one weight, and by the end of the performance I was a different weight. And we were doing a run through, and I was in the middle of a turn, stepped on my skirt, bit it really hard on the ground, cut up my knee, could barely walk the next day. So it's probably also strong suggestion if you plan to be like super active in a costume to maybe pick at it more than once. If you plan to keep using the same one until you make version 2 or 3, to like continue to update it if you need to, just make sure it still fits in some places.
I've encountered this actually when doing theater costumes, because I've actually costumed at least 2 women who were pregnant at the time that they were performing. And you know how the body can change pretty dramatically. And even people who just either gain, lose weight, you know, sometimes people who just, at the end of the day, they might actually be an inch or 2 shorter. And so those kind of things do really make a big difference. So really think about what you're actually going to do in your costume. Next up we have, don't bash other people's costumes. Everyone's at different levels. I just put this in here as kind of a, like, you know, we're all in this together kind of thing. And we're all at different levels. So instead of, it's so hard, especially, you know, when you think you know a lot of stuff. I'm so guilty of this, I will admit it. It's really easy to kind of get pulled into that. But really the best thing, of course, to do is to actually go to someone and say, hey, how'd you do that? Please don't touch, but how'd you do that? So, and wear it with pride. In some ways, the best accessory that you have for a costume is your confidence. You embodying that costume. Doesn't matter what it is. If you can wear it with pride, then you're actually going to embody that character a whole lot better. After all, you made that costume, whether or not you pulled it from your closet or you made it out 100 hours worth of work, you made it and you need to be proud of it. And you should be proud of it. I think that's the last of the slides, so at this point, we're here to answer questions, solve problems. Please ask if you have them.
Yeah, I think it's like,
So people talk about darts all the time, and I basically, it's a question, but, so I kind of know what darts are, but I don't understand how they apply to clothes.
I'm going to put up some resources, and I'm going to actually fast forward and then I'll go back.
while she's doing that, for darts, basically what it does is that if you have a regular baggy shirt, for example, putting it in darts will pull the edge of the back closer so it actually fits your back. So you don't have this building mass sitting in the back. And if you're going to be wearing it under, for example, a corset, I highly recommend doing that because it will reduce the amount of fabric that's going to be bunching up underneath your corset.
Darts are essentially, the purpose of them is to bring the clothing closer to the contours of your body. So I'll stand up and show you exactly what they are on my bodice. But there's these great books, a complete photo guide to perfect fitting and sewing for plus sizes. And I love those books because they're very picture heavy and they're really great at explaining all of these really basic and complicated sewing techniques. So, right here, there's some seam lines, and you can come look at it later. And these specifically are the darts that go in. And you can put darts in almost anywhere in garments, but they're there specifically, in this case, to shape it under my bust. And that's their purpose. And I can open it up afterwards and show you what they look like on the inside.
Ever cut the sleeves off a t-shirt? It'll have a big gap right here, because it's not just, it's boxy fitting. You can put a little dart from the bust towards the armpit to close that up and make that armhole all of a sudden be the same diameter as you want it to be, instead of what it was on the shirt that you had just modified. That's what a dart does.
In the back.
Recommendations for what kind of boning you're using for bodices?
There's a lot of debate of that and I'm going to come down on the side of steel, and that's simply because I do make corsets, and I make pretty heavy-duty tight-lacing corsets sometimes. You can use plastic boning. I don't use anything that I buy that you can buy at Joann's. If I'm going to use plastic, I'm going to go with zip ties. You can, but the thing about plastic boning is it's going to heat up as you wear it. And so, costumes are hot. And so it's going to heat up and it's going to actually poke you after time, or it's going to billow out in a weird way. So for bodices specifically, I like spiral steel. And you can get it, I use, online retailers. I use corsetmaking.com for my corset and boning supplies. You can get it in a spiral, just a big like 10-yard chunk. It's totally worth it.
You can also get flat steel as well,
Yes.
and I use flat steel.
Yeah.
And anytime you're doing lacing, so my Olympic bodice is all laced entirely in the back, so I have a piece of flat steel about this long in the back. And what that does is it supports the fabric so that when you lace it, it doesn't do this weird ziggy-zaggy line.
A lot of these things are sewing techniques that were used 100 years ago or more. So really, I mean, if you look at historic costuming stuff, even if you don't want to do historic costuming, you're still going to learn a lot of stuff. Or there's also another book that was on the page, that Couture Sewing Techniques. Awesome book, really fabulous book.
It's another one that's really good for hand sewing, and if anyone doesn't have a lot of sewing skills in general, I highly recommend at least basic hand sewing so you can do mending, basic modifications, changing out buttons. If you find something at a thrift store, sometimes changing the fasteners is all it takes to take something from meh to great.
The purple.
So, a lot of great costumers, no disrespect to anyone, tend to have background in making stuff art. You already got the knowledge from parents, kids, you've been in the hobby for years, just probably stuff.